Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are calling in from today or watching today. And of course, if you are watching the replay, welcome. Today is another Wednesday here in Melbourne, Australia. And Wednesdays is when I do the building influence training. And today's training has come about because of a conversation that I was having with someone on LinkedIn. I love looking at the comments, but people don't realize the value that you can gain as a business owner by just looking at the comments and seeing what people are responding back with. I often use it to kind of guide me into the content that is needed, the content that is required. So that's what today's topic is from. So thank you to the community who are often contributing. I want to know where you are from. Just leave me a note here in the chat. It's a global community, which is really exciting. So just leave a comment. And if you are watching the replay, go ahead and put hashtag replay in the comments so that we can see that you've joined us a bit later. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Not feeling 100% today. I have to be honest, have not been feeling very well. And of course, with what's going on in the world today, it's kind of like, I think it's my neck. I have not had a massage for some time. And if you're anything like me, you're spending a lot of time on the computer. And anyway, some self-care this afternoon after I finish that this is for sure. All right, so today's topic is called Unknown Expert, How to Start When You Don't Yet Have a Following. And this was a great question that someone asked, or a comment, when I was sharing some of the things that you wanted to start to do to really build your reputation as a trusted authority. And someone said, yeah, Annemarie, great advice, but what if I'm new to the market? What do I do then? And so this is why I'm sharing that topic, because she wasn't the only person that shared that. There's another few people that kind of commented or even messaged me. And I know that this is something. Hey, Deb, you're calling in, or I don't know why I say calling in, but watching from Geelong. Hope all is well down there. Now, for those of you who may not know me, my name's Annemarie Cross. I'm a branding communication strategist, also known as the podcasting queen, and really love helping people amplify their message, build their reach, build their reputation and their revenue with a podcast, their thought leader podcast. Lourdes, Lourdes, I think that's how you pronounce your name. Welcome from Sydney. Yeah, take care of that neck. Absolutely. I will. I've got a roller, one of those rolling, I don't know what you call them, but anyway, I'm going to put that up against the wall and do some rolling for my neck. All right, so that's a little bit about me. By the way, there's some really great conversations going on over on LinkedIn. I did an introductory post, especially for people who are quite new to the community, but what I love is going on there is that people communicate or sharing who they are, what they do, and their area of specialty. Now, what often I will do is I will search through those comments and have a look to see, that person is an expert or a specialist in the area of X, Y, and Z. I want to do a topic about that in a future podcast. So while you're here, please go ahead and share a little bit about what you do. I think the environment that we are in now, we have an incredible opportunity as smaller businesses to be able to collaborate, share our community and our expertise on a global scale with the technology that we have, at our fingertips. So go ahead and share a little bit more about what you do, because you never know. Your next joint venture partner, your next ideal client or a referral partner may also be looking through the comments. So please feel free, jump on and share a little bit more about who you are and what you're doing, because today is all about getting your message out there. So I invite you to do that. So the question originally was, what if I'm new to the market and don't yet have a following? I'm going to dive into that. I've got some 5 different steps or 5 different tips, if you will, of things that I've done, and I'm going to show you some examples. But before we talk about that and dive into that, there are some things that I want you to just be mindful of to make sure that you've got clarity in and that you've got in place. And for those of you who know me, and I've just, shared with you, I'm a brand strategist and I've been doing that for decades, even in the career industry. So I'm a bit of a brand snob when it comes to making sure you've got that clear message, because I've made the mistakes myself where I was talking about too many things, too many subjects. I'm a multi-passionate entrepreneur, love lot learning. But if we share too much and if we don't have that clear message, this is when we can water down the effectiveness of our message. So these are some things that I want you to just to ask yourself. And if you identify, yep, I can relate to that. Don't beat yourself up, but rather look at it as an opportunity. That is the gap that I need to fill. That is an area that I need to work on first. So when you're talking about your signature brand and message, are you struggling to define your unique voice and message? If someone were to say to you, sum it up in one sentence, are you able to do that? If not, spend some more time on that. So when you're asked, what do you do, or why should I work with you? Are you able to respond? Are you able to respond in an outcome-driven way so that someone who is your ideal client will go, you know what? Let's do it. I often compare myself to others and end up doubting my expertise and changing my message. You've got diverse experience and unsure how to explain it in a succinct, clear way. I used to struggle with that in the career industry because I was doing job search coaching, interview development, interview coaching, resume development. It was like, how do I put that together in a succinct umbrella statement? And I came up with get noticed, get hired, get paid what you were worth. So a lot of the different components sit underneath that, allowing me to bring quite a broad base of experience. If that sounds like you need to come up with that umbrella statement so that you can consistently be on brand in that message. What about this one? My message and how I introduce myself changes frequently. I speak and I hope for the best. That was what one of my clients said. Sometimes I go to a networking event, I'm so nervous, I start speaking and I'm thinking, I hope what comes out lands well. You don't really want to be in that situation. So we talked about your brand and your message. You also need to be clear on your niche. And I'm sure you've heard that over and over again to the point where maybe it sounds like a broken record, but it is so important because really it is capturing the language, capturing, and sharing your information in a way that resonates, that cuts through the noise, that when your ideal client hears, reads, watches you on a live and you start speaking, they immediately go, yes, I'm struggling with that. So if you struggle to attract him or her and you're not really sure why, sometimes that happens. I'm doing the stuff, but it's just not landing well. Maybe you need to just take a step back and do a bit more research into your ideal client. If you've tried lots of ways to promote yourself, but nothing has worked very well, if you're sharing content, but it's not really generating the leads where people are reading something and then reach out to you. Well, you go to a networking event online at the moment and people reach out to you and say, hey, I loved what you're saying. I would love to have a chat. Maybe they start stalking you online and then eventually they'll reach out to you. If that's not happening, maybe you need to go back and just revisit. Have I really clarified my ideal client well enough? If you can be in a room or online, we're doing a lot of networking via Zoom now, aren't we? And your ideal client is sitting there. And even though you introduce yourself, no one really shows any interest. Or if you really do struggle to define your ideal client, both demographically and psychographically, help. And if you don't really know what those things are, it means you need to do a bit more research and get clear in your ideal client. Along with the message, then you can come out and start sharing some of the things, what we'll be talking about today. But those are the two things that you need to put into place. Signature brand, lucrative niche. And by the way, at the end of today's presentation, I'll give you a link if you want to have a chat, if that's something that you are struggling with. Now, these are some things that I want to share with you of not do it. Don't do this, especially if you're looking to build your reputation as a trusted authority in your area, your area of expertise. And this is to do with the content that you share. And I've seen this happen time and time again, on LinkedIn, across Facebook and other, platforms. And that is to share irrelevant, or off-brand or off-topic information. And if for those of you who have been part of the Profitable Podcasting 5-day intensive, that's my challenge, which by the way will be coming up in August again if you're looking to launch a podcast. One of the things that I shared was back when I started podcasting, the way that my co-host and I would amplify that message was to use a newly launched tool. It was quite new, a couple of them actually. Facebook was kind of not real, was still considered a fad, and we were using Twitter as well. And we were getting our message out to, quite a diverse global listener base. And so a lot of my colleagues around in the local networking groups would say, we'd love you to share because we love what you're doing online. This is really confusing to us. Would you come and speak about that? So I thought, I'm happy to share. But inadvertently, what I did was I watered down my message, my brand. I've done this, and this is why I'm saying don't do this, because you too can water down your brand. When you can speak into a lot of different things, unless you really provide context as to why it's relevant to that thing that you want to become that trusted authority in, you can water down your brand. Hey, hi Heather, great to see you here. Irrelevant, information and off-brand, very, very important. Ask yourself, is this relevant for my audience? Is it elevating my reputation? Is it adding value? Is it consistent in the message that I'm trying to share as I'm becoming that trusted authority? And I want to show you an idea, an example. If you think of me, for me, there are diverse areas that I can speak about. So if I look at the content theme or topic, I can talk about personal branding because I'm a personal branding strategist by trade, if you will. I can talk about mindset because I've done a lot of certifications around that particular area. I've done a lot of coaching, lots of different modalities, career coaching, right through to, some of the other areas in the area of mindset. Inspiration. I love to share inspirational things so that people can challenge the status quo, can challenge their own mindset to achieve, the goals that they're looking for. But ultimately now, I really want to continue to position myself in the area of podcasting to really build reach, reputation, and revenue. So what I tend to do then is look at, when I'm thinking about personal branding or mindset or something inspirational, if I can tie it back to something that's relevant around standing out, around being heard, around being that influential voice and becoming known as that trusted authority, in fact, that industry thought leader, then I know that it's on brand, even though it may not necessarily mention podcasts. For instance, if you're following me on LinkedIn, go and have a look at a post that I shared today. It's got a number of name cards, and it says, "Hello, my name is." And I talk about how one of the things that I have seen as a podcast host, and one of my guest experts on Women Speakers Association Speakers Success podcast, I'm a host of their podcast, she shared with me, because the guest was an expert in the area of helping speakers amplify their message. She was saying you'd be surprised how many people on their speaker's bio don't write the name that they want to be known as. And I've had the same thing where a guest has put a different name in the calendar to their introduction to their bio. And I shared how this was not building their personal brand consistently. And so it wasn't talking about podcasting, but it did happen to mention how that particular topic was relevant to podcasts. So that's the kind of thing that I want you to do, is think about, the information that I am sharing, is it still relevant? Can it show context to the way that's context for those of you who may not understand the Aussie accent, context. Is it providing context and amplifying me, even though it may not be talking about the thing, like in my instance, podcasting? So think about that as you are mapping out your content strategy, but particularly the topics. Okay, so hopefully that's helpful. So step 1, there are 3 steps that I want to share, and that is create core thought leadership content that's relevant and that's resource rich. Love, Lourdes, that you are sharing the information there. Beautiful and so needed. mental health at the moment. Yes, good. Now, here are the ideas. Now, idea number one, this is something that I learned years ago, and I don't know if I can recall the name of the gentleman, Marcus. I can't remember his name, so I can't reference him. But where he shared this idea, and it's something that I have followed for many, many years, even in the career space, was he was in the pool industry and he was in the US, and I think he calls himself the sales line. Anyway, he was noticing that there was a downturn in the amount of traffic that would come to his in-person shops. This was quite some time ago. I'm talking back in the days when Gary Vee was still doing Wine Library TV, because I used this example when I was teaching in Chisholm Institute, their social media modules, and was using also Gary Vee as an example. But anyway, anywho, what he decided to do was to write 10 different articles listing, or the topic was the 10 most frequently asked question around pools. And I think they were doing pools, just say, for example, concrete pools. So the example was, what's better, a concrete pool versus I can't remember, what do you call those other pools, different pools. But anyway, the frequently asked questions. And what ended up happening was people would do research on pools. Fiberglass pools was another pool, I think. And so what would happen was these resource-rich articles answering the top frequently asked questions would be a valuable resource for them, even though they may have been talking about a competitor's product, but they became such a resource rich and it was in their environment. And that if people did a comparison, said, no, we will go for a concrete pool, there were internal links within the blog posts, and some of them will link to different sales pages and different products and so forth, but very much just focusing on, one frequently asked question, and he did 10 of those, and they worked really well. What are the 10 most asked questions when it comes to your particular industry and your particular clients? And I'm sure once you get started, a flood of different questions will come up, which leads me back to the very first point I shared earlier, which was you have to understand your ideal client to the point where they think that you're reading their mind. Wow, I was thinking that's what I'm struggling with. And you're the first person that actually addressed that. I'm putting together some potential training for an organization. And the first thing that I've done is I've reached out and I said, just want to do a check-in. What are some of the common challenges that you're dealing with? What are some other things that are going on? I want to make sure that how I present content and in the trainings is so relevant to their needs. And we need to do that too, even when we're creating content. But then what you can do, those 10 articles, if you've got a podcast, create a podcast. You might then share some stories. The way that you share content will be very different, even if it's the same article on the same episode, to then doing a video or doing a live stream or even a training about it. There's different aspects that you bring to the experience of that particular content that'll be very different. So don't be scared to repurpose it, because how many times have you been, you might have watched a movie and then all of a sudden something happens in there and you think, did I fall asleep the original time that I watched that? You pick up things, don't you? Because you've got a new lens of understanding, a new learning, and you see things that you may not have seen previously. And why I'm sharing that is so many businesses think, well, I can't do a podcast about that, or I can't write another article about that because I've already written one previously. I mean, if we as consumers and learners were able to learn something, read something, and all of a sudden we've got it, there would be many teachers and many educators out of a job. We need to, layered learning, I often say. So start to identify 10 frequently asked questions. Now, here's an example of what I've done. I've often been asked, wasn't asked, but a statement was said, I'm an introvert, so I can't really do podcasting. I'm too shy. And when I say to them, well, actually, I'm an introvert as well. I would much rather sit in front of a microphone or behind a microphone than go to a networking event where I know absolutely nobody. So, extrovert versus introvert, who makes the best podcast host? I did a podcast episode on that, and I might have even done an article, because you can then get your podcast episode transcribed, which can become a resource-rich article that might link to other articles that you've done, or you might take out segments of that article, of that transcript, and dive a little bit deeper into a specific area. Because let's face it, when we start mind mapping, there's a lot of different areas that we can dive deeper into. For us content creators, and I know that there's many of you out there, we probably have trouble turning off the faucet, but I know that there are other people who kind of struggle. They're looking at a blank page knowing, where do I start? But that's a great, start with one topic and then look at what are the different angles that I can bring out of that one topic. 7 powerful storytelling techniques that'll engage and inspire your podcast audience. I had Kim Adele-Platts come on the show, how to overcome imposter syndrome. That was something that many people would say to me, like, why would I listen or start a podcast? Who would want to listen to me? So Kim Adele came and she spoke about her experience of overcoming imposter syndrome and, techniques that others could use as well to help them do that. And of course, my friend from the UK, and Kim Adele is from the UK too, Mark Jarrett, who is just the king when it comes to networking. I don't think there's anyone in the world that Mark either does not know, is not connected to, or can find out who is connected to. And so the wonderful world of virtual networking, that was done before we were all virtual networking on steroids. So these are just some topics that were of interest that I thought, look, I want to cover that because I think it's relevant for my audience and for my ideal client. And so that's the sort of thing that I'm encouraging you to do as well. Okay, idea number 2 of the 5, top 3 mistruths. Now, once you get started, there may be certain things that are happening in your industry that may be absolutely irrelevant, or maybe are not relevant anymore because things have changed. Now, I'm sure that if we were to sit, across the table from each other, because of what's happening in the world today, there are industries that have to rethink, have to reshape, have to renew the way that they are doing things, because the new normal is going to look very different from the old normal of what was happening previously. So a number of you can start to really look at what is that happening in my industry. And for some of you, you may be able to lead the way. So don't discredit being able to speak into that. And so I will often look at different mistruths, different misconceptions to really address some of the common things that people assume, in my instance about podcasting, that's actually irrelevant. One of the things that I learned many years ago in the career industry was not to be determined or boxed in by what industry expected. In fact, I'm a bit of a rebel. When someone says I can't do something, I'll just watch me, or I'll find a way. And so, when people told me in the career industry years ago, before Skype, I think, was even created, no, you can't do phone coaching or email coaching. You have to be face-to-face with someone. Well, I'd love to go back to them now and go, well, what do you think about that point? Anyway, so, what in your industry do you realize now is BS? It's no longer relevant. Start to speak up about that. You be the person that leads that mantle and that pushes the way forward for that. The space is open. Why not step forward? So idea number 3 is talking about some of the mistakes in your industry. What are the things that people are doing that is keeping them stuck? Now, if you have a look at the example that I'm sharing here, I created 7 podcasting mistakes that aspiring thought leaders make and how to avoid them. These are the 7 mistakes that I made, that I identified. For those of you who've heard my story, I stopped my very first co-hosted podcast. One of the things that we struggled with was to monetize it. And it wasn't till, a number of years later that I identified, look, this is why we struggled. And now, of course, I've got 7 principles, which I'm going to share in another slide coming up, on what you do need to do. So for you, what are things happening in your industry? What's your ideal client doing? Because they assume that that's the way that it has to be done because, since year dot, that's the way that things have always been done. Identify that. And in actual fact, I would hope that if you're a coach or a consultant, that some of those principles and some of the mistakes that you speak into are very much part of your expertise, your thought leadership, your signature system, if you will, that you help people overcome. So when you think of that, I've created a podcast episode, infographic, social media posts, you name it, that particular post, one article has been repurposed in a lot of different ways. You can do exactly the same thing. Now, idea number 4 was 7 principles. So what are the 7 things? And if you've got 5 things, that's fine. I always love odd numbers, 3, 5, and 7, my go-to numbers. But what are some principles that you know are to be true or relevant and so important for your ideal client to implement? And then start to write content about that, because I'm sure that that's going to continue to speak into the expertise that you share, that you bring to your coaching, to your consulting, or to products that you might have also available for your clients. And then you can create an infographic. You can see there on the screen right here. For those of you who have not heard, and I'm sure you have, but I'm just going to mention it in case you haven't, canva.com. I just created, a graphic, an infographic from there. It's very simple to do, but very, very impactful as well. So what are some principles that you teach and that you know is valid and can continue to support your ideal clients through? Now, idea 5 of 5 is answer a question from the community. So remember I said to you that this whole training topic came out of the discussion between people that were commenting on my posts. Well, I took a screenshot of that post, and to say that this has actually come about of that. And I reshared the new post with them. And then I said, look, I'm doing a training, by the way, as well. And by the way, Diana, congratulations as well. You know what I'm talking about. So you see there that there's the comment and the question, the original post, the comment and the question. Then there was validation because someone else, Ian, as you can see there, came and said, yeah, I'm similar to Diana. And so then that led me to create this live stream training. So, often a question that I'm asked by coaches who are looking at really amplifying their message, becoming known as that trusted authority. And I've told them, go and do some research. They'll say, where do I go? Where do I research? The gold, the nuggets are in the conversations. I hang out more in the conversations. I just love to see the way people respond, and I look out for the common themes in the language that they write. You know how so many of us, when we're putting together perhaps a sales page or a piece of content, and we'll sit, looking at our notebook with a blank page. We don't have to start with a blank page. Start by where your ideal clients are struggling with. Let me give you an example. I'm doing some research at the moment, and here are some of the pieces of content that people have shared with me. Playing small. What do I do when a business partner quits? Why doesn't anyone reorder or come back? Why am I struggling to retain clients? So I don't need to reinvent the wheel. I can just use the language that my ideal client, who has given me exactly what they're struggling with. Why reinvent the wheel, or why try and rewrite that? And sometimes we can do that as specialists in our field. We can use this fancy schmancy technology and jargon in our industry. Don't do that, because we will confuse clients. They have no idea of the modalities and the jargon of our industry. Just bring it back to the language that our ideal clients using. Where do you go? Hang out on LinkedIn, hang out on Facebook in the comments, observe what's going on, grab a journal and start writing down a bit of a swipe file. Brilliant. That's another tip number
idea number 6. And so those are just some things that you can do. Brilliant. Now, if you've got any questions, write them down. I'm going to try and keep these trainings to about half an hour. And I can see that we're nearly at 10:30. So if you've got any questions, leave them in the comments below. Step 2, because I've got 2 more steps, and then I'll share one last slide and then I'll leave it for today. But step 2, then what you want to do is write a status post. And this is the formula that I use. Grab that, use this for yourself. A, open the conversation with a compelling hook, share some key insights in a few paragraphs, and then end with a question that invites people to share their thoughts. You want to keep the conversation flowing and going. Why? Because again, the conversation and the things that they share in the comments are going to be, it's going to be great feedback for you for another topic, or to validate that what you have is so important, so that for a free challenge that you've got, and then leading up to your program launch and opening the doors again, the language that you've captured is the language that your ideal client has shared. So here's the example. This is what I've done with the exact post, because what I teach, I do. So here's how I've written it. What if I'm new to the market and don't yet have a following? A great question I was recently asked. Here's how I responded. So on LinkedIn, what happened was, when it was cut off, that hook, what if I'm new to the market, don't yet have a following? Here's how I responded. And then there's this little more. And then people go, oh, I don't know. What do I need to do that? My original response, just get started. However, keeping in mind the platform you're sharing it on, your overall audience and their time zone, and then I shared some other things that I shared. And I said, then I decided to create this post. So the next slide says, again, this is the comment that I shared in the post status, on LinkedIn, because to build a strong following of your ideal client that continues to grow organically, along with building your reputation as a trusted authority, will very much depend on the content you share. Something else I know many businesses struggle with. I've got you covered. Check out the 5 ways to come up with compelling content your ideal client will appreciate, and the steps to get and keep the conversation going. I wonder, is there anything else you add? What worked for you? Let's keep the ideas flowing. Then what I did was created the actual slides that I've just shared in Canva and in a PDF, and I shared it as a document on LinkedIn, because I'm repurposing stuff. But I thought, hey, I really want to bring that to my community of change makers and share a little bit more, because I've spoken into it. I've shared more information just through me free flowing here in conversation with you than I did in the article or that I did in the document. And you can do this as well. So that was the post. So I shared, again, the document, and go through, if you're watching this from LinkedIn and you're connected with me, go through my posts and you'll be able to see this one and actually how it worked, so that you can model what I'm doing. And then step 3, and this is something else that I see happening as well on LinkedIn, share it, but strategically tag people. And again, I've done that on the post. I've taken some screenshots, but sometimes what I see happening on LinkedIn is that people are just tagging for the sake of tagging, or kind of alerting, and then I'll have a look at the comments. Yeah, great. Wow, fantastic. And I can see that it's probably, you've got to ask, am I annoying my community by doing that? Because remember, it's not about the likes. It's not about the thumbs ups and things like that. What you want to do is really create engaging conversation, because if you get even 2 or 3 comments that are just brilliant, and you know that it's relevant to your ideal client and what they or he or she is struggling with, or the learnings, then that's just giving you great feedback, again, of information that you can continue to share, rather than 100 of those with no real conversation going on. So strategically tag. So what I did, and this is what you start off with, because if you've got a clear understanding of your message and it's cut through, and you really are leading your industry in what you are sharing, and you start to do this and you're speaking to an audience of one and you're strategically tagging people, your information will grow. Your, grow in momentum building. It will just happen. It really will, because one person will share it with someone else. Someone will come across it. It'll have this, and it always starts with that, that message of one, or that audience of one. So what I did was, in the post, was I CC'd Kim Adele and I CC'd Mark, because I mentioned both of them in the post, in the, the screenshot of the podcast. Now, what I might have done, interview that I did with them, I could have included a couple of other guests as well. But obviously I wanted to be integral in what I was sharing. And these particular, if I think of Kim Adele and Mark, these were things that my ideal clients and my community were interested with. So again, I could have used other people's examples and tagged them as well. And of course I tagged Diana and I tagged Ian, because they were the two people that kind of prompted me creating that post, or this post and this training. And I kind of alluded them to that, and that will get the ball rolling. So strategically tag. Is that particular person relevant to the story and what I am sharing? And start to think of that too, rather than randomly tagging people in your community who may think, oh, there's another tag again for me. So again, if you've got any questions, let me know. Otherwise, let me share the steps, and then I'll finish off and let you go back to your work. So if we're not already connected on LinkedIn, please go ahead and send me an invitation. Would love to connect with you, find out more. Lourdes has already shared she's a mental health counsellor. She wants to, actually, you know what I'm going to do after this? I'm going to share that post, because she stepped forward and she shared. Now, check out the post that I referred to. This is case sensitive. If you want to go back and have a look, bit.ly/unknown expert. And if you're struggling with any of this and you want to have a chat, AnnemaryCross.com/let's chat. Let's chat. Let's see where the gaps are. Let's see what you need to be working on to move forward. So let me stop sharing my screen, and I am going to share Lourdes's post here. Connect with Lourdes. She is a mental health counsellor. She now wants to focus on helping people on grief and loss, finding the inner tools to cope, to move on in life despite griefs and challenges, the bereavement, loss of income, relationship, threat of serious illness. Very, very important industry, important work that you're doing there, Lourdes. So connect with her if you yourself are struggling with that, or you know someone who you want to put in contact with Lourdes. You are welcome. That's what this platform is all about, and social media is all about. We've got an incredible community of people such as yourself and others as well who've got the answers, the solution to issues. So I'm going to leave it here for now. I hope you found that helpful. By the way, if you think of a particular topic that you would like me to cover, maybe there's something that you have been struggling with. Now, if I'm not able to help, what I am able to do is find a potential guest for a podcast episode. And so, you're part of my community. You're an important part of my community. So let me know. And even if you want to DM me, what you're struggling with, because I do these trainings every Wednesday here in Australia, Tuesday if you are in the US, and I always like to bring relevant value to my audience. So hope that was helpful. So again, I'm just going to shout out to Deb, who was here, Lourdes, who's shared more about what you're doing, Heather as well, and have a fantastic rest of the week. I'm going to go and have another cup of tea and probably do some rest today and take a break, because I can. All right, everyone. Bye for now.